Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 75 of 2020. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at The Odds Breakers and follow us on social media / The Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by mybookie.ag. For a 200% sign-up bonus, please visit MyBookie and use the promo code ODDSBREAKERS. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs, sponsor the podcast and the website, we'd love to help you out. Please become a member at theoddsbreakers.com. For $24.99 a month, you get my plays in premium plays before the line moves. If nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. Picks and information is what we try to send out, my friends. We have a fantastic show for you today because Mr. Adam Burke from ATS.io and BangTheBook.com is coming back to break down college and NFL football. Very excited to have Adam on here, and his knowledge is great, and I think he's doing exceptionally well in the Circa Sports contest as well, so I'm going to talk to him a little bit about that. Before we get into our show today, I wanted to mention a few things for members. The lines move pretty quick, especially in college basketball. I try to get a jump on it at night, late at night when the kids are in bed, and in the morning, and then maybe make some plays later in the day when the line moves again. For example, we middled the Marquette game under 153 and over 144 yesterday. And it's seriously all about how fast you can get these lines. So unfortunately, our lines don't get to some people that fast because some people are not getting email notifications to their phones or text message notifications when an email is sent out. So I wanted to quick cover that. With your email provider, especially Gmail or Yahoo, you can simply go into the settings and add the extension and just put your text messages pushed to you from certain email addresses. And that way you will get a pick right to your phone when you know it's going to happen. All you have to do is just click on it and open it, right? So that's what I suggest. The Lions movement has been so quick this year, and it's important to get in front of it. That's my thing. I hate giving plays to people that are stale. I'd rather give out these plays when I see value in them before a lot of other people get to them, right? It's not like the old days where they would just sit there until middle of the week or possibly game day for some of these. So, that's important. And setting up text messaging definitely helps. If you're a free Odds Breakers member, you can always do that too, because we're trying to give out about one free pick a week on the free members area. So I ran our numbers for this year, and I would like to go over them with you really quick. Transparency is everything. College basketball, we are 11-9-1. We are down. We had a bad start. We were like 2-5, and then we kind of creep back to 11-9-1. So I'm happy about that. Close to even, obviously. As far as college football, we are 87-75-9, up 16 units. So that's good. I think last year we were only finished up 10 units, something like that, 9 or 10. It was a little bit tougher last year. NFL last year was great. We were over 50 units up, but this year we are down 12 units. We are in the NFL 51-54-3, minus 12. I've been way better on totals than I have been on sides so far in the NFL. I'm hoping that changes, obviously. It's been a grind in the NFL for us. But, being up 50 units last year definitely helps my spirits there. It's all about time. There's ebbs and flows of sports betting. The key that I wanted to go over with you is our money line sprinkles. 29, 54, and 1, up 19 units. That says it all right there. Sprinkling the money line on these big dogs is very important, and it's profitable. Anything 3.5 or higher is when I sprinkle the money line. Okay? And if I ever just take a money line only bet, I also take the spread, right? Why would you not? If you're that confident, why would you not have a safe, spread bet as well? It just doesn't make sense to not do that, in my opinion, right? There's a lot of variance that happens within these games, as we know. So, profitable year so far. Really excited about college basketball. My friends, if you have any games that you'd like to break down, please visit us at theoddsbreakers.com and send us a message, or just go to Twitter. I accept DMs. DM me all day, or even just tweet at the Oddsbreakers. We would love to break down a game for you. Without further ado, let's get on our great guest, Mr. Adam Burke. All right, now I'm very happy to bring back a man who has been a staple in the sports betting and podcasting world. You know him from his great work over at Bang the Book and now ATS.io. I'm very excited to welcome back Mr. Adam Burke from ATS.io and BangTheBook.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Skating Tripods. Lots going on, Adam. We have a couple sports hitting us right now. Some preparation for next year's, or for the winter sports, supposedly hockey, and a couple other things that are around the corner, man. How the heck have you been doing?
You know what, man? All things considered, I've been doing all right. Keeping busy, obviously, with the football seasons here, and now college basketball is here, so I'm playing a ton of catch up with that. And the NBA will take a very far back seat for me with all the other stuff we got going on right now.
The NBA always takes a back seat with me because I don't even touch it until the tournament's over. That's how it is for me. Yeah. I'm not a big NBA. I don't blame you. Not a big NBA fan. Don't like how the game goes. But either way, we still have a nice transition period here because we have college basketball, and I'm really excited about that. Always nice to talk about something fresh in everybody's minds. But Adam, listening to you all these years, I hear about the beers that you drink once in a while, and I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of beer myself. So prepared this question for you. As you know, I want to talk a little bit about some of the beers that you enjoy. And I kind of made a list of my top 5, and you can give me 5 or your top 5 or whatever. It's hard to have a top 5 when it comes to beer. But I'm excited to hear what you got, man. And I think we should just kind of go one for one as far as drinking beers. And you track your beer drinking on an app too, don't you?
Yeah, I have an Untapped account, and frankly, you and I were talking before we started recording here that I'm not even up to 700 beers yet, which for the life of me I can't figure out because I'm pretty sure I've had a lot more than that in my time. So I think I've either been too drunk to catalog some of these or just got to the game a little bit too late. But primarily I'm an IPA guy, and it doesn't really matter if it's West Coast, East Coast, New England, hazy, double, triple. Doesn't really matter. It's definitely a big-time IPA guy, and it's the thing about IPAs is that, there's so many of them nowadays that, not only are they seasonal, but it's like there are IPAs for every situation. Just sitting at home on a cold winter night, there's an IPA for that. Day drinking on the golf course, there's an IPA for that. I appreciate the flexibility of IPAs, and I've had a lot of good ones in my time.
Oh yeah, man! IPAs are they're my favorite too since they came out, and a lot of different stuff has come out. Sour beers I've really started to enjoy sour beers. I can't have too many of them though. After one or two, the heartburn monster sometimes comes in attacks. But as far as IPAs, they are definitely my go-to for just certain situations. Just like you said, I do love how there is a beer for everything nowadays. But I got to tell you, with that Untapped app, I don't know how they keep up in adding beers because there's got to be new beers hundreds of them almost every day, in my opinion. And what happens if you drink a beer that's not on the app?
I've actually been the first or second person to check in a beer a couple of times, but it's such a great marketing tool for the bars and the breweries that they pretty much keep their draft lists updated, their draft and can lists updated on Untapped. So they'll just kind of add a beer. I'm sure they have, I don't want to say backdoor access, but I'm sure they have some kind of access as the administrator of an account to put in beers. And yeah, I've been the first check-in for actually a couple different beers here recently, I think, which is always a nice feeling. I kind of get to set the market, so to speak, on what the ratings might look like for it. I always try to give them a benefit of the doubt, extra little half point when they're first starting out with a new beer. But it's great because not only do you get to see what places have before you go there, but also you can kind of put together a friend network. And by the way, I'm skating tripods on Untapped, but you can put together a friend network and see kind of what everybody's having. And, if it's something local to you, you could check in at the different venues and stuff like that too. So it's, I've found some pretty good stuff through it. And I've, found some friends across the country that I've just run into different places that are now friends on Untapped. So it's kind of a cool little community. Well,
there you go. So if you haven't checked that app out and you're a beer drinker, make sure you check that out. I've heard of it myself, but I'm going to have to definitely get on that myself. That sounds like a fun thing to do and to log some of your beers. I mean, some of the times I could swear that I've tried this beer before and I can't remember. Well, this is the app that would take care of that and jog your memory. So good stuff there. Well, let's get into some of our favorite beers then, Adam. And I'm going to start out, and we can just kind of go one for one here if that's cool. We'll start out with my number 5 beer. And sometimes it's not just the beer, it's the brewery or the people that make the beer also, as well. Ballast Point is my number 5. It's a San Diego beer. They have a lot of great selections. They have a lot of great seasonal stuff, but they're one of the originals, I would say, pretty early. And I'm just going to throw out Grapefruit Sculpin. And Sculpin's their key beer that made them big. A great IPA, but the grapefruit adds just that little bit of flavor that I always find absolutely delicious. This is that IPA that I'll enjoy sitting down watching a game, man. I will love the Grapefruit Sculpin, and there's a lot of situations I like it in, but that's kind of what I think of with this Ballast Point IPA. So always delicious one, my man. Have you had that?
Yeah, I've had that. I don't remember if I've had the grapefruit one, but my last Sculpin, it's actually insane I can remember this. My last Sculpin was, there's a little bar in Caesar's Palace right by the entrance, the left entrance if you're looking straight at the property. There's a little bar right inside, just inside the casino floor. It was the last Sculpin that I had probably like about a year and a half ago now. I don't know why I remember that, but I don't know. I usually don't remember much else from drinking, but I do remember that one.
Must have been your first beer in Vegas, but I know what bar you're talking about. I think it's by the Diamond Club there.
My first beer in Vegas is probably when my mom wasn't paying attention, and I was like 9 or 10 years old, walking around, playing up at the Midway. Some dad probably left his beer somewhere, and I probably took a pull off of that.
It's probably the first way I've tried many myself as well. So good stuff, man. What's your number 5 or just one of them?
I'm actually going to throw out something that's not an IPA. This is one, in fact, this brewery actually closed, unfortunately, but it was in Toledo, Ohio. It was a Belgian triple called Chain Dog from Black Cloister Brewing Company. And when I was first getting into beer, I had a very long, drawn-out Belgian phase. Like, I'm talking drinking, a lot of Delirium, stuff like that. There's the stuff that actually, comes imported from Belgium. And this Chain Dog, it was like 10.5%, something like that. I had it at the Beer Fest here in Cleveland. And, damn it was good. I wish this brewery would have made it. Pizza was actually really good there, too, for what it's worth. But Chain Dog, man, it was exactly the way you would expect a Belgian to come. Perfect flavor profile. It was like it had been made in Belgium, but it was made in Toledo, Ohio. They actually used like some of the old techniques. They were like the one guy was, I want to say, like a Lutheran minister or something like that. So like he had actually gone over, to Europe and looked at brewing techniques and everything, and along with his religious, whatever he did over there. But yeah, Chain Dog. I wish that place was still open, and I hope someone's since picked up the recipe and is making it somewhere else.
Oh, for sure. That sounds like a delicious beer, man. So if I ever make it up your way, we'll definitely have to check it out. If it's still there, of course. Lagunitas is my number 4, Adam. And they're kind of one of the originators of this whole thing. My wife went to school with their niece, and so we've hung out with the owners a few times. Real nice guys, real nice guys. Tony there and Marissa, great people. He told me the whole story, how he got everything started in California in Petaluma. They're originally from Chicago. At least the wife is. I don't know if Tony is. Can't remember, but they're just such great people, and it tells me how he kind of got everything going, started brewing it in his garage and everything, selling it to local places in San Francisco, and it just kind of blew up from there. He got in at the right time. He started doing it in the early 90s, and then the Lagunitas IPA is just the traditional, here's what we've been doing. We started this whole thing beer drinking. So love the taste of it still. And I also love Waldo's. They have this triple IPA that comes out in April for $4.20. They like their $4.20, if you know what I'm saying. That beer is hard. It's for not a casual beer drinker would like it. It's thick. It hits you, but it's like 11 or 12% beer, and it's delicious. If you really love IPAs and you love a lot of hops, a ton of hops, it's Waldo's, man. Have you ever had a Waldo's?
Never had a Waldo's. I've never had a bad beer from Lagunitas, though. The Super Cluster is really good. Obviously, the traditional IPA. Southwest Airlines has the 12th of Never, and I've had my fair share of those on flights out to Vegas. A couple of years ago, we actually went on Thanksgiving, and I don't know, the flight attendant must have thought I was cute or something, but I think I drank like 7 of them for free. So shout out to whoever she was. I hope she's having a good day. But I really like 12th of Never. And Lagunitas it's solid. I think a lot of people also sort of look like in the IPA family at stuff from Stone. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's a solid, reliable product. And yeah, I like Lagunitas IPA quite a bit. And again, like I said, most places, especially if you go to a place that doesn't have a great beer selection, it seems like they all have Lagunitas IPA on tap. And I'm never better than that. That's for sure.
Yep. And when they sold out to Heineken for $1 billion or where somewhere around that, I'm sure that helped their distribution a little bit. So that definitely helped them. But IPAs are becoming more mainstream because of that. I even think Ballast Point's now owned by, I think it was like, I can't remember if it's Budweiser or something. And so, but either way, as long as they keep the same recipe, I'm fine with that, as long as they don't mess with that. Yeah, ton of IPAs, and they also have that daytime. It's a lot lighter of a IPA beer, and it's low carbs. I think it's like 3 or 4 grams of carbs. So if you're trying to watch your weight, not like beer drinking's the smartest thing to do anyway, but at least you can have a couple of those and feel better about it, man. Who's your number 3?
I think we're on my number 4, actually, which is,
number 4.
And I was telling you about this before we started recording here, that one of the things I love about my wife, and I'm very fortunate to have my wife, because someone actually finds a way to put up with me in this world. But anytime we go out of town, even though she doesn't drink beer, we go brewery hopping. There are just so many different breweries, so many different characteristics, and so many different good food options. Breweries tend to have very, very good food. Mm-hmm. I don't know if people really realize this. Maybe some foodies kind of look down on them, but breweries tend to have really, really good food. But we did some brewery hopping in Louisville, here during the pandemic, just sort of trying to get away for a weekend, find something to do. And Mile Wide Beer Company was a pretty unassuming place. We were like 2 of 7 people that were there when we actually went. I think they were closing up within an hour or something like that. But they had this Golden Face Pale Ale. And sometimes I just want something that's kind of toned down a little bit, not as hoppy, not as much of a punch in the face as an IPA. This was a pale ale done really, really well. It was so good. The bartenders and the guys that were working there were just really nice. It was just a great experience in general. And I just remember this Golden Face Pale Ale, which I had back in June at Mile Wide Beer Company in Louisville, and very, very solid beer. I like a good, well-done pale ale, especially because you can kind of drink them in a little bit more volume than an IPA usually. But this was definitely probably the best pale ale I've ever had.
Well, fantastic. Sometimes you're in that mood. And pale ales, I've never liked them that much. I always just liked the more hoppy stuff. But there's a very few and far between types of pale ales that I can actually stomach. So I know what you're talking about. And I think
that's why it stands out for me, because I'm not a huge pale ale guy, but when I get one that's really good, you remember it.
Right. Fat Tire is one I'm thinking about that I might like. Their pale ale. I can't remember, but yeah, that's and I shouldn't remember that because I never buy pale ales. But good points there. Yeah, I don't know why. Just guys that like IPAs don't love the pale ales. It's just I think that kind of all my friends kind of feel the same way. Number 3 for me is not. It's not an IPA, but it's one that I kind of enjoyed throughout my life, and it's for certain circumstances. And it's Leinenkugel's Summer Shandy. Now, there's a lot of people that that hate it. There's a lot of people that love it. There's not a ton of people that are really in the middle about it for some reason. But I started drinking it right when it first came out. And I used to drink the Honey Vice, of course, from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Well, Chippewa Falls, it's their sister city up there in Wisconsin. And, they have a great family up there, and they just always have been brewing some great beer. But this Summer Shandy hit, and it hit across the nation. You see billboards these days, come in March, April, May type times. But there's nothing better than that first hot spring day or that summer day, and then you see a Summer Shandy. You taste lemon like you're a kid in the summer drinking that cold lemonade, but it's a beer. That's the feeling I get when I drink Summer Shandy. You just got done water skiing. You're a little bit, dehydrated from that. Grab yourself a Summer Shandy. There's nothing better. It really hits the spot.
I give you credit for that one. I'm not a big Summer Shandy guy. I don't know why. I just never really got into it. I think part of it is, I'm not a big lager kind of guy. I don't really like a lot of the really basic, lighter colored beers. I'm not a big lager guy. I'm not a huge Pilsner guy. Not just I don't know. I don't know what it is, but that's one I've tried it a million times over, and I cannot get behind it, but I get it. It's like you said, it's one that, kind of evokes more than just the taste of it for you. So I can understand that for sure.
Well, for sure. Awesome. And, it brings back a feeling, and I think that's kind of key. I think there's a lot of feeling that goes with what you eat and what you drink. And if it gives you any type of nostalgia too, it's all the more power to you. Who's your number 3?
Number 3 for me, this is a place we went to in Raleigh last October, a place called Linwood Grill and Brewing Concern. Now, obviously the name, not exactly what you would expect for a brewing company. I'm not exactly sure what the hell a brewing concern technically is, but there was an IPA there, double IPA called Less Talk, More Hops, that was just exceptional. In fact, the other one I had too, called Hop on Top, was also really, really good, to the point where I was about ready to take one home, take home a 4-pack or a growler or something. And then I realized that all I had was a carry-on. So, I wasn't going to go that route. Wasn't going to be able to get it through TSA because, I guess it was more than 3 ounces. But these two beers were both really, really good. So for anybody in the Raleigh area, and Raleigh, great beer town. Not that that's a surprise at all, but very, very good beer town. But Linwood Grill and Brewing Concerns, Less Talk, More Hops was definitely probably the best beer we had on that trip.
Less talk, more action. And I think the concern is they're concerned for your beer taste, so they need to bring you into the bar so you don't have to be concerned anymore because they're showing you what real beer tastes like. I don't know. That's just what I kind of came up with. But
that makes sense.
Makes a little bit of sense. That's cool. I love hoppy beer, so I bet you a nice cold one would hit the spot if I check that place out in North Carolina. I'll have to remember that next time I hit that place. If I make it back to North Carolina, it'd probably be for a game if I ever went back to North Carolina. I don't know. Or the only time I'm usually there is when I'm hopping planes, really, in Charlotte. So
we're going to be sometime early in 2021 here. We're going to make a trip to Asheville. So I'm gonna be able to be up to my neck in IPAs down there in Asheville. So I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Oh, for sure. Good stuff. Who's your number 2 then, Adam?
Number 2 for me, and this one's very close to number 1. The difference here is that number 1 is from a local place, and I got to give some love to the local places here. But there is an awesome location in New Orleans called Urban South, and I know everyone thinks New Orleans, they think Abita. That's fine. Abita is very good, but Urban South, they had a triple IPA called Tranquil Dawn. It was the top beer on my list until earlier this year with the one that I had around here. But man, just an incredible flavor profile. Didn't hurt that New Orleans has some different alcohol consumption laws, so I was able to have it in the passenger seat of my buddy's car on the way back to his house. But damn it, man, that was a great beer, and the spot was really, really cool. That's a lager I actually did like too. They have a Paradise Park lager at Urban South that is actually pretty tasty. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting back to NOLA to go to Urban South. That's for sure.
All right. Urban South sounds delicious. When you check out New Orleans for Mardi Gras or something, make sure you check that out. Number 2 for me is one that's won a ton of awards. And it's to all the beer connoisseurs that I know, they always kind of revered this beer as number 1. I was a little bit skeptical, but maybe I jumped on the bandwagon after I tried it. It's Russian River's Pliny the Eldar. And I don't know why, but it's just got the perfect mix of hops, taste, balance that I've had. And I loved it so much. I kept the bottles. I actually have the bottles on my liquor cabinet right now. But they don't distribute that much. There's only a couple states that gets it. And it's definitely not mine. I kind of hope that they, get it out a little bit more. But there's a little bit of could be a little snobbiness to that. There's a little bit of snobbiness when it comes to the beers, as you know well, Adam. And I can't wait to check it out again. I want to get back to next time I go to San Francisco area, the Bay Area. That's where the Russian Rivers Brewery is, and they have a couple other ones as well. Something pig. I think it's called a blind pig. And then they have Pliny the Younger too. But there's a line in this place every single morning to get it fresh. That's how they sell it to people brewed that day or the night before. And there's this giant line. And I think you're paying like $144 a case of this beer. I mean, trust me, they know how to make money off of it. But it's a delicious beer. But it's one of my favorites, man.
Yeah, this is one, I don't want to say it's like a unicorn, but it's one that I've heard about a million times over and have never had the chance to have. We were supposed to go to California, stopping before and after a trip to Hawaii earlier this year, but, fuck you, COVID. But, what? I'd never had Pliny. I've heard so much about it, though. It is on my list that, up near the top of a beer that I absolutely have to get whenever I get the chance.
All right, man. Well, let's get into number 1 then. And I forgot about a beer, so I made 2 number 1s. I hope you're not angry with me for that. But
it's your show. You do what you want. The only problem is we're not drinking these as we're talking about them.
We should be. I know it's not. It's past noon, so why aren't we? But anyways, Surly, Todd the Axeman. There's a brewery in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, called Surly, and they
been there.
Have you been? Awesome. Cool. Well, maybe you had Todd the Axeman then. It's one of the best beers that I've ever had. It's got a Citra and Mosaic hop. It's just absolutely delicious. Love every single drink of it. I've bought them. I've found them on the West Coast. Just once in a while, I'll see them. They're starting to expand a little bit. They expanded their restaurant and brewery and made it huge too. When I visited a couple buddies out there a couple years back, I checked it out, and the brewery's beautiful now. Huge outdoor area too. Lots of picnic tables all around. Lots of things to do there. It's just a fantastic place, and they have a ton of beers that are very good. But Todd the Axeman's my favorite. It's the brewer of this beer was named Todd, but I don't think he's there anymore. I think he moved to Three Floyds in Chicago. I think there was a dispute between him and the ownership. So I thought that's interesting, but they still brew the beer there, and it's one of the best IPAs I've ever had, man. My other one is one I shouldn't have forgotten about, but it's Spotted Cow from the New Glarus Brewing Company. And it's not an IPA, it's a wheat beer, but I've been drinking that since college. The thing about New Glarus, I don't know, I don't like wheat beers, but for some reason this one doesn't taste wheaty to me. It's just got this unique taste to it, and cold, when it's really cold, it is just absolutely delicious. The thing about New Glarus is that they will not sell their beer anywhere else. They choose not to. The only place you can buy it is in Wisconsin. And the thing's blown up in Wisconsin. You can get it at the airport there in Milwaukee or other places. But people have tried to grab it and sell it in Chicago and other places, and they've gotten in some big trouble for it. People have gotten charged with crimes, I believe, for it. That's how much of a tight lip they put on this beer, and for some reason, or their beers over at the New Glarus Brewing Company. But Spotted Cow, for some reason, a wheat beer, just something I have to get every time I go visit my folks out in Lake Geneva area, Wisconsin. So not sure if you had those two beers, but those are my number ones.
No, I haven't had either one of them. We did go to the Surly Beer Hall in December last year. We went up to Minneapolis for a weekend and walk around Mall of America at Christmas time, and also see a concert up there. I'm dying for a Juicy Lucy from Matt's right about now. But so Surly was insanity when we went there. It was we went before a concert because the concert was a little bit later, and we couldn't get a table. We wound up sitting outside. Now, mind you, I'm from Cleveland. I can deal with the winter. My wife is from South Carolina. She still can't, despite being here for 15 years. We were outside at Surly, sitting around the fire pit that was out there, drinking. And, it didn't last very long. We'll put it that way. But the place was awesome. In fact, I think that they actually closed the beer hall now because of COVID.
Yes. So
beautiful, beautiful facility. Really cool grounds, but very, very nice place. Unfortunately, it seems like they've kind of fallen on some difficulties, like I'm sure a lot of brewing companies have through all this stuff. But no, I really liked Surly. I wish I could have spent more time there. We talked about going back the next day, but we never really made it there.
Oh man, yeah, and I'm sure they'll be bringing it back at some point. The beer hall, at least you hope so. But Surly sold pretty well around the Minneapolis area, St. Paul area, so I expect them to be back anyway.
Were you in Milwaukee? Were you a big lakefront guy?
I used to go to the lakefront to Summerfest all the time. Well, I was from Chicago. Chicago, I was where I was born. Lived in Madison a good portion of my years for 14 years before I moved out west because I went to school there. But we used to go. I was going to Summerfest 16, 17, 18 years old, sneaking beers. Hell yeah, I love Summerfest. I mean, 10 days of straight concert. They have the turkey legs there, corn. They have the cheese curds, man. Holy cow, what a fun time Summerfest is.
There was an Amarillo IPA from Lakefront Brewery that I almost put on my list. We did the brewery tour when we went to Milwaukee when the Indians played the Brewers a few years ago. And, Lakefront was a very cool spot. Another one of those big open beer halls, the long picnic tables, stuff we used to be able to enjoy before COVID. Good cheese curds, awesome chili dog there too. But I almost put their Amarillo IPA that I had on my list of 5 here from Lakefront Brewery. If anyone goes to Milwaukee, it's a great spot to check out.
Oh, for sure. I've had their beers plenty of times, and I'm trying to remember if I actually hit the brewery before. But I've seen Lakefront all over the place, and I've drinking quite a few of those beers. Who's your number one, Adam?
Are you and I alcoholics?
Sounds like
I'm trying to figure it out here.
Well, being a Cleveland fan and a Chicago Bears fan, how can we not be? Is the question.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And frankly, I mean, I've been a lot of places, man. I haven't been everywhere, man. But, Ohio is just a great state for beer. I mean, you got Rheingeist, you got, Mad Tree, You got several places down in Cincinnati. A lot of people like Moorline. Taft's is down there. Just a lot of places that people love in Cincinnati. There are a lot of great places in Cleveland if anybody's ever coming here. I got plenty of recommendations for that. But my favorite brewery in the state of Ohio is in Sandusky, which is where Cedar Point is. It's actually in downtown Sandusky, a place called Clag Brewing Company, which stands for Cocky Little Asian Guy. The owner is Vietnamese. The owner, it's a place called Small City Tap House, but it's also Clag Brewing Company. It's Asian food and a brewery, which seems like the two wouldn't mix, but it absolutely does. And the dude makes bomb-ass beer. Papa Booey Double IPA. It's a beer I had earlier this year, and it blew my mind. And like I said, I mean, when I travel, my wife and I hit up multiple breweries. I've had things from a sour gummy worm IPA in Minneapolis to, all kinds of stuff out in Vegas, to red ales up in, Minnesota and Wisconsin, and just Austin, good beer town down there too. But this beer, I mean, it is a citrus bomb and a half. He actually wound up making a Mama Booey triple IPA, which was pretty much just as good. But Clag Brewing Company, he gets awesome stuff locally, awesome tap list. And I have yet to have a bad beer that he's made. I don't know why people go to Sandusky other than to go to Cedar Point, but if your wife and kids want to go ride roller coasters and you want to go drink good beer, Clag Brewing Company is the place for you.
Wow. Well, there you go. Your number one Clag. Keep it local. So that's some good stuff, man. Hopefully, one of these days I'll have to try some. Maybe they'll sell some, Adam. Who knows?
It's so good.
It's just. There you go.
I want to go there again. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been there, and I crave their beer. I mean, I've never been addicted to drugs, but I feel like this is what it would be like, just wanting to go up there and get some of their beer. But just for things that are widely available before we move on from this, stuff that people should be able to get pretty much everywhere, because it seems like me anyway, I'm talking about things that are kind of more localized. You're kind of appealing more to the listenership. Hot Bullet from Sierra Nevada is very, very good. Nimble Giant from Trogs is one of my all-time favorites. In fact, if you ever get to the Trogs Brewing Facility in Hershey, PA, very, very cool spot. Again, another one of those with the long picnic tables, the big beer hall thing, life pre-COVID. Toppling Goliath, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of them. Maybe you've had them when you've gone back to Wisconsin. They're based out of Iowa. Their Pseudo Sue is awesome. I think they have a King Sue that's really good too. Both of those are good.
Yep.
The Stone Cold Steve Austin Broken Skull IPA from El Segundo is actually pretty good too. And then Single Cut, everyone knows about Single Cut if you're an IPA guy. Cigar City's good, and you mentioned them already, but I really like all the stuff from Three Floyds too. They do a strong job across their entire catalog, not just with the IPAs.
Right. Yep. I think that JLA, is that what it's called?
Highlight.
Highlight. That's
Highlight.
Spelled with a J.
Double IPA Florida Cracker is good.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Those
and
are.
I saw another double hazy recently that I don't know why. I think my hands were full at the beer store. Again, common theme here. And I didn't grab what their new double hazy was, but I'm sure that's good too.
Oh, it's got to be if it's from Cigar City, man. Well, great stuff. Yeah, other mainstream beers, Deschutes is always, they're freshly squeezed, always fantastic beer. If you're this time of year, if you like stouts, I kind of look at the fall winter as stout beer time. I like KBS Breakfast Stout. That's an amazing beer too. Yeah, any of those, always delicious stuff. So we destroyed beers, Adam. We
didn't talk about Busch Light or Coors Light or Lone Star. I think we missed those.
We'll save those for the ballpark. But next time you come on, we're going to have to talk about beer a little bit. I think that might be any new beers that might pop up. But we won't make our listeners listen to 30 minutes of it. But we will definitely have to mention something. So that's how much Adam and I love beers.
Well, all you got to do now is just extend it. Tag us on Twitter.
Yes.
Tag us on social media.
Yes.
Let us know what beers you've had.
Feel free to tag us on social media when you're drinking a delicious beer and let us know. We would love to know where you're at. Next time we visit, we'll have to check it out. So always good stuff there. Let's move into little college basketball. Just a question I have for you, because I was trying to figure this out with Kyle Hunter. And I'm wondering what home court advantage is really going to be with these empty stadiums this year with no fans. I thought that it would be less because, some of these big stadiums, the Kohl Center, Cameron Indoors, I mentioned last week, just have so many fans. And I thought it would bring the home court down and an average 3.5 to down to 1.5, even lower than football. But I don't know because I'm looking at the stats now. You're looking at away teams. They're 229, 41, and 12, 48.7%. Home teams 51.3%. Favorites are 49.4%, 50.6%. So that's pretty close. But away favorites are only 45.9%. Which means that home dogs are 54.1%. And this is from Covers as of this morning. So I'm looking at this, and I'm like, maybe the home court advantage is still a little bit more than I thought. What do you think about that?
I think it's weird traveling in COVID. I mean, my wife and I love to travel. I'm a points guy and all that kind of thing. And for us, traveling is just strange. And then I imagine, for these kids, especially the ones from smaller schools and stuff like that are kind of, getting out of their little bubbles and, getting away from what they're so accustomed to here over the last several months. It's kind of a shock to the system. It's sort of strange in a lot of different ways. And then you exacerbate that problem with the fact that you go play in an empty arena, an empty building where, maybe it's some team personnel or, some interns or, work study students with the athletic department, stuff like that. It's got to be weird. And furthermore, too, you start thinking about the shooting backdrops and the sight lines and all of that, where, you may play in one of these bigger venues, 10,000 plus seat venues, and it feels like that spot behind the backboard goes on forever, or you're playing in this 900 to 1,200 seat venue and you hear just the echo of everything. It's got to be really strange, but I think travel is just such a big part of it, especially because, a lot of these college basketball teams, they don't really have the ability to fly places, or if they do, they're flying into whatever the cheapest airport is, taking some long bus ride, stuff like that. I don't know exactly how I would quantify it, but what I do know is that it's definitely one of the more challenging things here about the college basketball season so far.
Oh, for sure. And you wonder maybe, just like you said, how things echo is so much different. It's just a different animal. So it's worse for the away team because they still haven't played in an empty place like that. They played in their own empty place, but they didn't play in the opponent's empty place. That's some great points. And yeah, the travel must be extra stressful with COVID, man. What's so funny is when I traveled a little bit back in July, we were so paranoid about it because, a lot of people, especially, my wife, believe that if you get it, there's a really good chance you're going to die type thing, right? And, so, it's just uncomfortable, Somebody coughs and everybody looks at that person like he just killed everyone on the plane or something. It was ridiculous back then, but I can see some of these stresses still affecting the players, and in these situations. So,
and especially too early on in the college. Sorry to interrupt. Early on in the college basketball season, you're probably stringing together away games, especially because a lot of these teams have to go and get their paychecks and all of that. So you're on the road for a week plus. You can't do anything. You're stuck. You go to practice and you quarantine in your hotel room. Basically, you can't go out and do anything. All of your meals are going to be catered in the hotel ballroom or whatever else. It's just, it's got to be stressful. It's got to be boring. You kind of lull yourself into this, sense of boredom, and then you're supposed to go play a basketball game at max effort. It's got to be a real challenge for these kids. It really, truly does.
No doubt. I'm thinking about keeping my, my home court a little bit higher, probably close to where it was for my next round of handicapping. So
I guess the better question is, where do the odds makers have it? Are you seeing, and obviously everything's kind of illiquid at this point in time. It's a pretty inefficient market, but do you feel like the odds makers have changed home court advantage at all?
Not really, because looking at Iowa versus North Carolina last night, Iowa was a 4.5, 5-point favorite. If you looked at where they were really in, odds makers will look at KenPom more than the AP, but that's kind of what it should have been, I think, with a 3.5 point home court advantage, in my opinion. North Carolina took it to Texas, almost beat them. They're probably right now, you might say they're the best team in the ACC, maybe, because Duke's been getting their butts kicked. Virginia lost a bad game, so I think that they're factoring in just like before almost,
And I think too, I think that's something I've kind of been chasing a little bit with my college football power ratings, is that I feel like in a lot of instances, they left home field advantage alone. Maybe they cut down some of the, major outliers on the high side, like in Alabama or Clemson or an Ohio State or Michigan, something like that, where, you've got 85,000 people in that venue typically. Maybe they kind of cut those down and capped them a little bit. But other than that, I feel like they probably didn't change too much about home field. So I feel like they probably wouldn't change much about home court either.
No doubt. No, I'm going to keep mindful of that too, because that's something that's very important for some of these. When you're getting through the threes, I know 3 is not like it is in football, but 3 is something in basketball. It's not huge, but it's something. And I look at the 3s and the 5s a lot. I don't know why I don't look at 4 as much, but yeah, I'm going to keep my mind on that a little bit more. Well, let's get into some football then, man. Finally. And, there's once I talk about this game, it'll probably get canceled, but that's just the life that we live in right now. We do have a game, unfortunately, that canceled that you and I prep for, but hopefully a couple of these keep rolling. I'm going to go with Nevada versus San Jose State here, and San Jose State's laying about 2.5 points, and this baby is at Sam Boyd Stadium because Santa Clara kicked their asses out of the state to play a football game like they did the 49ers. I guess they had to treat them equally here. The total on this game is 58, man. Have you got a chance to look at this one?
Yeah, I had a chance to look at this one. We talked about this one, a guest that you regularly have on, Kyle Hunter, and I, we discussed it on ATS Radio here on Wednesday. And, he talked about liking the over, and in fact, I'm seeing some over money hit the board now, so I don't know if our show's moving lines or if people are just feeling confident to jump in on this one, but I actually like Nevada in this spot. Taking away San Jose State's home field advantage, it is a little bit weird, I think, for Nevada to have to go and play at rival UNLV, but not play UNLV. I think that's kind of a little bit of a strange situation. And also, too, don't think that because Nevada's in Nevada that, they have some kind of home field here. They don't. Reno is a long way from Las Vegas. It's absolutely a plane flight. These two schools probably a similar distance in terms of having to fly, a similar time frame, all of that. But, I just think that Nevada here, they're so much different of a team than anything else San Jose State has seen so far this season. And I love the job San Jose State head coach Brent Brennan has done. I feel very happy for them that they built this program up into something that actually, if they win this game, they're in the Mountain West Conference Championship game. So, who would have thought that a couple of years ago? The thing for me, though, is Nevada's passing attack is just, it's very good. It's very efficient. Carson Strong looks really good in this offense now that he's had a couple of years in the program. Both of these defenses are on equal footing in terms of having less than 5 yards per play allowed. The difference, I think, is that I think Nevada's offense is just, they have a little bit more explosive potential to them. So I just think this is something different than what San Jose State has seen. I like Nevada plus the 2.5. Looks like maybe it could go back to 3. So I'm going to kind of wait this one out a little bit. But if it just sits 2.5, even at minus 105, I'll just take Nevada money line and see how it goes.
Well, there you go. And I'm actually on the opposite side on this one. And,
all right.
Yep. And no, this was a tough one to me, but the 2.5 made it possibly playable. I'm actually mad at myself a little bit my whole plan was to be on San Jose State before this whole thing started. And to be honest with you, and this was like back in June when I really thought we're going to have normal seasons and everything was going to go away. And then, COVID happened and the Mountain West, they were an afterthought to me, really. And then all of a sudden they started playing in late October, and it's kind of like, okay, what do we got? And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. San Jose State's good. Duh. And I didn't get a chance to really capitalize on them too much this year, but This might be my last shot, and I'm going to take one shot with them. I think these two teams have a ton in common. They're both +3 turnover ratio. Both are 1.5 to 1.6 positive net yards per play. I think Nevada is the 1.6. Really close. Both of them have not faced Boise State. They have some common opponents there. So the schedules are very comparable, but the difference that I see is that San Jose State's a little bit more efficient on defense. They only allow 20.4 yards per point. Nevada allows 16.5. And I guess the edge that I thought that I found, Adam, and good call for their explosive plays, you might be right there, but the edge that I looked at was the what have you done for me lately scenario. And Nevada was outgained by Fresno State last week, and they did win the game, but they were still outgained, and Fresno had some injuries, and Nevada lost the week before at Hawaii. San Jose State's last two games was a convincing win at Hawaii and a double-digit win against UNLV, and I just think it's their year. They're kind of I think there's going to be a lot of money coming out of Nevada, so I do think that spread will go down, personally. And it's because of Vegas, for one, and number two, Nevada's been a team that people have been on. But I just like San Jose State a little bit under the 3, probably for 2 units, man. But not a huge disagreement, just one small play.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at Nevada's game last week, and one thing I think is worth pointing out is that while Nevada was outgained by over 180 yards, Fresno State ran 105 plays in that game to Nevada's 61. So that was a big part of the equation for Fresno State. And this has been an issue for Nevada. They've had problems getting off the field on third down a little bit in their last couple of games. So that would be a worrisome thing here against San Jose State. But, look, I think about this too. You mentioned some common opponents here. San Jose State was a 2.5-point favorite against Hawaii last week. Nevada was a 6.5-point favorite at Hawaii a couple weeks prior. Now, Nevada did lose that game, but have we really seen anything here where Nevada was 4 points better than San Jose State in that spot, with the common opponent here recently? Now San Jose State's 2.5-point favorite on a neutral. Feels like maybe the perception of these two teams, the evaluation of these two teams has been skewed a little bit, based on some of the recent results, but maybe San Jose State is just, the better coach team and the team that's more trustworthy here. I guess we'll wait and see, and you and I will have some bragging rights, I think, on this one.
That's right, we will. And, that's true. Great points. What changed? Well, my argument would be the perception was wrong from the get-go because of the limited sample size you did have from a shortened season. I suppose that'd be the only way I could answer that. But, the what have you done for me lately is really what my cap's about. So I'm going to be right or wrong. So,
and I think it's fair to have that this year, because especially this deep in the season, because you're trying to find teams that are hitting some sort of stride, are at least still invested, all of that. Generally speaking, if you had a full sample size of 11 or 12 games by now, how much would you weight the last 2 games? But you've got 6 in a really crazy effed up season to where, yeah, maybe the what have you done for me lately thing does matter more. And we have seen that play out in the betting market in terms of some line moves where it really has been kind of a reactionary market in some ways.
No doubt. But there's so many twists and turns to this handicap too. San Jose State was supposed to have this as a home game. Are they pissed off? Is this going to affect them bad psychologically? Which way is that going to go with them? I'm very curious because this game is so huge that the winner of this is going to face Boise State, right? Of course, if Boise State beats Wyoming, which we expect, that's a pretty big spread in itself. But that's the intriguing part to me in this game. I think this one's going to be a fun one to watch either way, Adam.
I think so too. I think you sit down with one of the 200 beers we discussed in the first half hour of the show and watch this game here on Friday night.
There you go. We prepared people for their beer drinking extravaganza this Saturday.
We prepared people for the holidays is what we did.
Exactly. There you go. Let's move on to a game that's going to be a little bit more mainstream in some ways anyway. It's a Big 12 championship. It's a Big 12 contest, a very end of the year type Big 12 contest. Oklahoma versus West Virginia +14. The total on this is 57. How important is this game to Oklahoma is what I'm asking myself, Adam. I'm pretty sure that Oklahoma's out of the playoffs. I don't care if they blow out West Virginia and blow out Iowa State next week. How the hell are they going to jump Cincinnati? And I expect them to win. But Cincinnati, if they lose an overtime game, and Tulsa's going to be talked about, it's just there's just so many deserving teams that don't have 2 losses, and we completely forget about the Pac-12. You still have USC sitting over there. I don't see how they're going to get past Notre Dame if they lose to Clemson. I don't see how they even could get past a 2-loss Clemson team if they lose to Notre Dame. What are they playing for here, Adam?
I don't think they're really playing for anything. And I really do wonder, what happens with that 4th playoff spot. I mean, I don't think that Florida's going to beat Alabama, so I don't think they're going to get in the top 4. Clemson, I think, does beat Notre Dame in the rematch, but does anybody have a better body of work than Notre Dame that, could jump over them? I mean, Florida would have a second loss. Texas A&M, they haven't really played the best of schedules. I guess they beat Florida, so there's that. But, I don't really know what happens here with the playoff picture. All I know is after how Oklahoma's looked in the playoff the last couple of times they've been in it, there's really no justification for putting them in there. So I agree. And I think that we kind of maybe to a degree saw that a little bit last week where they were stymied by Baylor. I mean, they only had 4.6 yards per play in that game against Baylor, failed to get 300 yards in that game. And you can poke holes in West Virginia, and West Virginia was awful last week against Iowa State. I choose to believe that's more of a commentary on Iowa State than it is on West Virginia. I think West Virginia still has a good defensive team. They still have enough offense to be competitive. And going to Morgantown for an early kickoff, especially in a game where motivation is potentially lacking, I don't like this spot at all for Oklahoma. And I know that there won't be fans in Morgantown. If there were, this would be a pretty cut and dry handicap for me taking West Virginia. I still like West Virginia at 14. I'm waiting to see if there's a 14.5. But with the total here coming down a little bit, the lower scoring expectation makes me believe that West Virginia can hang around here unless this plays out like last week's game. And I just don't see that being the case.
Yeah, man. I don't know what's stopping me from betting West Virginia, really. I mean, Oklahoma's plus 1.8 yards per play. West Virginia's 0.74, which ain't terrible at all, really. That's above average. I mean, West Virginia's done some good stuff this year. They've hung with Texas. They've, beaten some teams. What I see here is I look at what happened last year, and I was on TCU at the end of last year, and I thought West Virginia, they're not making a bowl game, so they're going to quit. Well, they didn't quit. Neil Brown and company came in and beat the shit out of TCU and took them out of bowl contention. That tells me something here. That tells me that they're going to give an effort, really, Not just that, my power ratings don't have it 14. They don't. I mean, I'm closer to 7 than 14. I'm past the 10 here. I'm just wondering why I haven't bet this. Maybe I'm scared of Lincoln Riley. I don't know, but this could be a play for me, man. It really could.
Yeah. I got this one 11, which is around where this line originally was before this game was taken off the board. I think it was, I don't remember if it was West Virginia or Oklahoma that had the COVID issues a couple of weeks ago. I think a big part of this is that Oklahoma kind of turned a corner in the middle of the season. They had that loss to Iowa State, had that thriller type game against Texas, and then the defense really locked down. And the defense has been the issue for Oklahoma over the last few seasons here. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe perception of Oklahoma has just gone up with the defense playing better. But to me, again, if you trust Oklahoma's defense, then this should have a lower scoring expectation for you because West Virginia's defense is pretty good in its own right. So I agree with the under money here. And again, when I'm seeing an under and a double-digit dog at home, early kickoff, so on and so forth, I just think that there's a correlation with this total move and the fact that West Virginia, I think, is the right side.
Yeah, that under went down because of the Alex Grinch who stole Oklahoma State's Christmas, their Big 12 championship berth, and that's another team you wonder about this week. But it's going down. Morgantown is a hell of a trip. And the look ahead that Oklahoma has for revenge to Iowa State is something that we have to think about as well, man.
No, absolutely. Yeah, there are definitely some angles like that with conference championship games this week to consider.
All right, well, I'm going to leave it at that, but this could very well be a play for me. North Carolina versus Miami. Miami's laying 3 points. The total of this is 66.5. This is a simple one to me, and I'm going to keep this short. Both teams, prolific offenses, great quarterbacks. Sam Howell, 42 points per game, 68% completion, 26-6 TD to interception ratio. The team's got 1.85 yards per play net, which is awesome. Miami's De'Aaron King, what a great addition what he was from last year's awful Hurricanes team. They averaged 35 points a game, 20-4 TD to interception ratio, positive 0.9 net yards per play. Great team there in Miami. I've been really high on Miami this year, and it's made me some money. The thing about Miami is that they're going to get in a shootout if they have to. Now, their defense is better than North Carolina's, but I think Miami has the power to move points. And you've seen UNC give up a lot of points to a lot of teams, Wake Forest, a couple other teams they just that are capable, not like the Syracuses or anything, but teams that are capable, UNC will give up points. And I'm going to throw out that Duke game that they destroyed. Duke's just a whole nother story this year. But Miami, 23.25 seconds per play. It's pretty fast. I expect them to play a little bit faster because they've also ran some clock out. Same with North Carolina. This is going to be a fun game. This is going to be a high prolific offensive game. I took the over 66.5, and I think it's at 67 now. But I like this thing up to 69, so I'm going to put a play on this as over 66.5, 2 stars. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think this is a game where you do have to look for a lot of points. And you got two teams here that aren't really playing for anything. We already have that Clemson-Notre Dame rematch locked in, so Miami's not really playing for that. And when you get games where there are two teams that aren't really playing for anything, the pressure's sort of off. It's go out there and have fun and play football and all of that. And these are two quarterbacks that are plenty capable of going out there and having fun and playing football and putting up big numbers in the process. So I think it's a good look from you in the 66.5. As far as a side goes here, I have Miami -1 in my power ratings, so maybe the slightest of leans to North Carolina. I was also very, very high, like sky high on North Carolina coming into the year. They've been a little bit of a disappointment. They haven't covered their last 3 games. Defensively, they've had plenty of issues, as you talked about already. So I don't know if I'm going to have anything in this game outside of the over, but I do agree with you on that position.
All right, good stuff. Well, I got to tell you this. I have about these teams equal. They're just about equal in my power rating. So what does that make Miami? -2.5? Is that it? Yeah, with their the home the turnover chain and everything that happens at home. They do have some fans there. I don't know. I would say 2.5.
Yeah, I would say it's fair. It's just the thing for me about Miami is like the only thing I remember about Miami's season is getting waxed by Clemson. Like I remember nothing really about their wins. I don't remember anything. I know they had that win against Louisville where they had some big plays to respond to Louisville touchdowns, stuff like that. But that's the thing for me is Miami feels almost like an afterthought, and they're 8-1 and 6-3 against the number. So why haven't I paid more attention to this team?
Right. And the Clemson whacking, what happened to Miami? It was a rainy game, and they just were intimidated from the start. Miami in the rain sucks. De'Aaron King in the rain, no. That's something you can't bet because for some reason they just can't get it together in the rain. Even though they do have somewhat of a run game, but a lot of the run game is De'Aaron King actually, so that's part of the reason. But in my opinion, if it's raining, you got to stay away from them. But the weather's looking all right, so that's interesting. It's going to be a great game, a fantastic game. But I'm going to be hoping for the over here. And if I don't get it, I might have to drink an extra IPA there, and that won't be good. So if it's one of those 11%ers, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't blame you for that one.
Let's move into another game that I know a little bit more about, and we're going to talk Purdue versus Indiana, and I'm just going to tell you, I had Purdue. I had Purdue plus 11, and I was going to take the money line as well. I thought that they have a very damn good shot at this. Indiana celebrated so hard after beating Wisconsin, and a lot of discrepancies. They were outgained by over 100 yards. I was all over Purdue, Adam. I don't know if you were, but that would have been my play. Wisconsin versus Iowa. This is closer to a pick'em here. I wrote down Iowa plus 1.5. It flipped a little bit. The total on this is 43.5. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, like you, I liked Purdue in that spot. My line was 8.5 on that game, so I did like Purdue a little bit from a power rating standpoint and also just from the spot in general. And as you said, Indiana, I mean, they were badly outgained in that Penn State win, too. That was a very fortunate win for them. And the Ohio State close loss, I don't really know what to say about that one. But also, Ohio State left some points on the field and could have put that game away in the first half. So just looking long-term at Indiana for when they make a bowl game, probably going to be fading the Hoosiers when they get to that bowl, despite the fact that I think they'll play extremely hard for Tom Allen in that one. Wisconsin and Iowa, I mean, I don't know if either one of these teams is worth a bet. I mean, quite frankly, Wisconsin is nowhere near what we thought. Their opening game, great performance against Minnesota, was a lot more about Minnesota than it was about Wisconsin. And I know Wisconsin's had the COVID problems and so on and so forth. I mean, I don't know what I would do here. You know, I mean, Wisconsin has not been impressive offensively the last couple of weeks. Defensively, they've been pretty good. Iowa's defense is good, but you won't catch me taking under 42.5, under 41.5 in college football very often.
That's for sure. Yeah, that line's it's went down a little bit. I think it started at 45, and I think I took the Northwestern one under too, and I'm almost in buyback mode for that one. You know, my Badgers, I got to tell you, after that Michigan game, everyone's all high and mighty, blah blah blah, and they lose their two receivers. One was, I think, had COVID, one was injured, and then all of a sudden you saw what happened against Northwestern. They got out penaltied out in. They just couldn't do anything in the red zone. They've been awful in the red zone, actually, or even on the plus side of the field. I mean, that's what their problem really is. You know, they don't have any skill players getting open. And you see Graham Mertz, he's holding the ball, he's not trusting his receivers, and they're in the wrong spots. Like he threw one, the receiver was supposed to cut back. It was an interception last week. It's just like, who do you blame here? Well, you blame the coaching, I guess, but at the same time, you're not going to find Wisconsin this low in value for a long time. I think this is the lowest you're going to be able to buy them. You know, they are getting Danny Davis back from what I suspect, and they do have Pryor back now. Ferguson's there. They only played 3 games in like a 3-month period, not 90 days, but you know, from September, October to beginning in November. There was 3 games there. Sorry, not September, October, November, and towards the end of beginning of December, right, when they played Indiana. I mean, they're just rusty, extremely rusty. One thing that went against them, they lost Caden Lyles, their center. They lost him, and the other center was snapping at Mertz's feet the whole game, missing some blocks. I wonder if that gets cleaned up a little bit. Iowa's been playing very solid football since their first 2 games, and I'm pissed at Iowa because I was on them their first 2 games, and then I think I faded them after, and that's when they flipped their switch. Don't you love it when that happens? You think you're right about a team, but in the long run, you're actually right about it, but the bettings were worked against you. You know, that's happened to me a few times. But Petrus is a young quarterback. He's looks pretty good right now, but he's going to be mistake prone, and he's faced some pretty easy defenses these last few weeks. You know, straight up power ratings, I have Wisconsin winning this game. But, you know, what I look at is the history. Wisconsin beat Iowa 7 out of the last 8 times. 7 out of the last 8. Wisconsin knows this is a big spot for them. This is a huge get-up spot for the Badgers. Kind of saving their season a little bit, saving a little integrity. I can see them coming out just firing this game, just straight up firing. So I'm going to take Wisconsin. I think a money line bet's probably smart on them. A couple stars maybe on something like that.
Yeah, I got Wisconsin minus half a point in my power ratings. So, now that they're favored, it does make sense. And by the way, I did misspeak earlier. I was talking about Wisconsin versus Michigan, not Minnesota. My apologies for that. Just want to make sure I clear that one up. Look, this is one of those things to me. And Wisconsin, you mentioned them winning 7 of 8 against Iowa. It's sort of one of those things that we get a lot of these matchups in college basketball where the two teams are pretty similar. One team is just better, a little bit better across the board at everything that both teams do. And I think that's kind of how it is with Wisconsin here, where I think that, again, both of these teams, they want to play lower scoring games. They want to rely on the defense. They want to try to move the chains, get third down success, stuff like that. Wisconsin's just been better at it in this head to head. So I think that, while you don't want to necessarily look at all trends, something like that about Wisconsin winning 7 of 8, I think it makes sense here in this one just because of how the two teams are put together year in and year out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's the best angle to go by. And Iowa felt kind of high and mighty coming back against Illinois last week, so we'll see what happens when they play someone a little bit more on their skill level here. Last game that we have to talk about, Adam, is for college. Then we'll do a few NFL. USC versus UCLA, +3-ish. It's bouncing around a little bit. The total on this is 62. That total scares me a little bit, I got to tell you. I think it's begging people to take the over. This game went crazy last year to 87 points. Both defenses were bad last year, but this year it's been a kind of a difference. The UCLA's given up 25 points per game compared to 35 last year. USC's given up 22 points per game compared to 29 last year. Some good positive regression there. They're getting better. USC, they started out terrible this year, right? I mean, going to Arizona against two teams that still don't even have a win and barely beating them both games. Well, that factors into their low net yards per play. They're 0.5 net yards per play. I think they're kind of like a what have you done for me lately team too. They've gotten better. UCLA is 0.76 yards per play, but I've been making money off UCLA the last 2 weeks. I've been on them, and now I'm wondering if the value's gone. But as long as they're not turning the ball over, they're a very solid team. And I think I like the coach and Kelly, and I don't like Helton, that much. I do like Graham, their offensive coordinator there at USC, but I'm going to lean UCLA at the 3. But I don't have a play on it. Have you looked at this one?
Yeah, I looked at it a little bit. I have USC -4 in my power rating, so I'm not that far off the number. And it does surprise me maybe a little bit to see 2.5s popping. But I also think, too, that people have wanted UCLA to be good the last few years, and they just haven't been. And maybe now Chip Kelly's starting to turn it around a little bit, so people are starting to believe a little bit in the Bruins. I don't know if I do here. It's really a question of, which team has more success with what they do. UCLA runs the football very effectively, over 5 yards per carry. USC cannot run the football, but Keaton Slovis is probably the best offensive player in this game. So, does USC move the football through the air? If they do, they'll put up points. Does UCLA move the football on the ground? If they do, they'll keep it away from USC. So that's really the big key to me here in this one. And it's a pretty simple handicap is, do you like USC's run defense? If the answer is yes, then, you probably want to take USC in this one. If you don't like USC's run defense, then UCLA is the play. I don't really know necessarily. It's a game I'm going to stay off of, but I think that's just kind of what the handicap boils down to.
No, that's great points there. USC does have the better defense this year, but their running game, they allow 4.5 yards per rush, So really good against the pass. But UCLA could play keep away with them, So great points.
Live betting game. Live betting opportunity. If UCLA is running the football down USC's throat, then USC is going to have a very hard time.
All right, there you go. Live betting opportunity, man. Well, for the sake of time, let's move into the NFL. And unless you have a college game that you want to throw out.
No, I mean, in the spirit of our good buddy Kyle Hunter, I don't know if we should talk Miami of Ohio and Bowling Green or So UAB and Rice, some other bad game on the board.
Hey, even Kyle said he didn't watch the Akron Bowling Green game, so I give him a little props for that one.
He's having a pretty good run here of late, but that might be the best decision he's made recently.
Exactly. But he's probably watching like UC Berkeley right now on TV or something. So remember that. Let's move into a little NFL then, my man. And I'm going to start with a game they pulled off the board, but I did hit this one earlier in the week. It's Arizona versus the New York Giants, and the Giants are home dogs at plus 2.5. I don't even think I wrote the total down. It disappeared on me. The game's an interesting one, in my opinion. It's because you have the Cardinals. They're in free fall. Since that amazing catch against the Bills to win the game in the final seconds that DeAndre Hopkins had, I think they're still in letdown mode from that because they dropped 3 in a row since then. And the Giants, they're the exact opposite. They won 4 games in a row, right? I mean, you have this perception change now, in my opinion. You wonder what this line would have been 2 weeks ago even. You can say 3 weeks ago. I even wonder what it would have been 2 weeks ago, The Giants beat Seattle. Well, in my opinion, the Giants haven't beaten a lot of great teams but Seattle. Just one of the teams they beat the last 4 games has a winning record. A couple of them were like the Eagles and the Washington football team that I don't even think had Alex Smith in yet, So the Giants are a little bit overhyped in my opinion. Looking at my power ratings, I have the Cardinals 6 points better on a neutral field. So if you want to give the Giants a few points, that's fine, but I'm sure as hell not giving them 3 points for their home field. They haven't been that good at home, in my opinion. They've been okay at home, but they just kind of seem to be better cover on the road. Arizona net 0.8 yards per play advantage over the Giants. The Giants are still in the negatives. I think the Giants are negative 0.4 and the Cardinals are positive 0.4. Being that Colt McCoy is probably going to be the quarterback here, I'm going to play AZ. I like them at the 2.5, and I probably like them at the 3, but not as much. But I did hit this at minus 2.5, Adam. Have you looked at this one?
Yeah, I looked at this one. It's a tough game. I do think Daniel Jones will be back. They were kind of pointing in that direction. I don't know if that's just gamesmanship or not. It's a hard handicap for a lot of the reasons that you outlined. I mean, first, I don't think very highly of the Cardinals. I don't think that they're that good of a football team. I think this is a good individual team that just doesn't play well together. And I think this is a pretty big indictment of Cliff Kingsbury, who I think does some fun things as far as the NFL is concerned. But this is a team that should be better and shouldn't be falling apart here at this time of the year. Now, the other side of that coin is, they played Miami. Miami's a good team with a solid defense. Buffalo's probably going to win the AFC East. Seattle, we know what Russ is capable of. We know what Seattle's capable of, when they're kind of in the right mindset and all that type of thing. On the road at New England, Foxborough's not what it used to be, but it's still a long trip. You're still facing Belichick, so on and so forth. And then the Rams. And the Rams are a team that I've had a very high perception of here recently. I've had a couple of wins in the Circa on them, the Tampa Bay game that also had them last weekend. I just think the Rams are a very good team. So for Arizona, their last 5 games, really their last 6 games, including the Seattle win, have all been against above-average competition. The Giants are not an above-average team. Their last 4 games, as you mentioned, have been against bad teams, with the exception of Seattle. But Seattle seems to have their own problems here, too, that they're kind of dealing with. So the question is Arizona in free fall mode, or is this a byproduct of playing teams that, frankly, they're just not as good as? And I don't really know the answer to that question. There are 2 certainties I do know about this game, though. One is I don't like the spot for Arizona coming off of a division game that they just lost that probably took away most of their playoff hopes, and now they're traveling to the East Coast to play an early game. And the second thing is the Giants aren't great, but damn it, they play hard. They are playing extremely hard for Joe Judge. That defense keeps them in just about every game with a really below average offense. I can see why you like Arizona. I kind of started this week thinking I kind of like the Giants, but I backed off of that a little bit. I think it's a no play for me, but I think it's also just such a complex handicap. And one of the games that, keeps you and I engaged and invested in this business, because there's so much to talk about on a macro and micro level with this game.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. They're 6-6. I think the fact that the NFC East is so terrible should open up a few playoff spots. Is it 7 teams or 8? I think it's 7 still.
7.
But if for some reason something gets canceled, it's 8. I think that's what the NFL's rule change was, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that this is kind of do or die for the Cardinals. I think it's bigger for them. And yeah, one other thing I'd looked at, the Giants, they have improved on their defense, but they haven't faced a running quarterback yet, one that moves on their feet like Kyler Murray. That's where I think that the edge might be on this play. So I'm going to stand strong at the 2.5. And I wonder where it's going to reopen, because if Danny Dimes is playing, you'll probably get a better number than that. If he's not playing, it's probably going to go to 3. That's just my opinion on that. And speaking of the Circa, Adam, wow, man, you're doing pretty good over there. I looked at the standings recently, and you're in the top 100, I believe, aren't you?
Yeah, 38, 26, and 1. I think I'm in like a 20-way tie for 80-something, point out of the money. Like I said, I'm holding hope that the other shoe doesn't drop here, coming off of a 5-0 this past week, where even the leans that I liked that didn't make the card actually came through. You always get a little bit scared after you have one of those kinds of days, but I'll tell you what, man, it's always fun to do. It's always such a challenge. People think it's so easy. Oh, pick 5 NFL games. Oh, stale numbers that come out on Thursday. But, it's not as cut and dry as grabbing line value. It's not as cut and dry as, just picking 5 games. You got to find 5 games. Most weeks I like 3 games in the NFL, and I'm kind of stretching a little bit to find 2 more. So it's a challenge. It's a welcome challenge. I'm happy with how things are going so far, but the next 20 picks, there's a lot on the line, so I'm certainly not taking anything for granted.
No, man, you stay strong, Adam. I have utmost confidence in what you're doing here, man. You are kicking some butt. I am going for you this year. There is no person that I want this to win more than you this year, man. Obviously, I'm having a terrible year in the circle. I'm doing excellent on the totals this year, and that's what's keeping me close to the 50% in the NFL. But as far as the sides, I haven't been that person, but there would be nothing that makes me happy if you win this thing, man. So keep your head up. You can go 5-0 every single week as far as I'm concerned.
I hope so. I just want to cash. Winning would be obviously awesome, but making the money would be pretty cool too. Top 50 plus ties, so a lot of work to be done. But hopefully I keep seeing them as well as I have been.
Hell yeah, man! Go get them. Let's move on to our next game here, and this one was it's another interesting handicap here. Kansas City versus Miami. And Miami's a home dog of plus 7.5. The total on this is 49. I'm going to let you go first on this one.
Oh, man. This is a difficult one here, because I do believe in Miami's defense, and I do believe in what Miami is building. And I believe that with Brian Flores, the emotion that we saw last week coming out, protecting his players talking about that after the game, they are 100% behind this cat, and he's done a great job. And last year, he dealt with a lot of bullshit. He had to get rid of some guys that weren't really, fitting the mold for what he wanted his team to be. And we see the results now with a team that has complete buy-in, a great defensive mind. He's been really good at varying up coverages, disguising coverages, this and that. The difference is when you play Kansas City, there are only so many options you can take away. Flores comes from that Bill Belichick coaching tree of trying to take away a team's best weapon. Who's Kansas City's best weapon? Is it Kelce? Well, how do you take Travis Kelce away when he's a matchup nightmare against every nickel, every linebacker, every safety that tries to cover him? All right, do you take away Tyreek Hill? Okay. Then Pat Mahomes just moves 6 yards at a time instead of 12. Do you take away the running backs? Well, that's dangerous, because then you're putting another guy in the box or spying a running back, and that means more room for Kelce. So the thing that concerns me about Kansas City week in and week out is whether or not they care. I mean, they've had some games here in a big favorite role where they have won. They've done what they've had to do to win. but they're not concerned about covering the spread, getting style points, anything like that. Their focus is on repeating as the Super Bowl champions. So are they invested to go out here and cover 7.5? I don't know. I think they can do it. I think they can do it against anybody out there in the NFL, and certainly a Miami team that has all kinds of red zone issues and all kinds of questions with Tua. I just don't know if I can trust Kansas City to show up and want to be that team any given Sunday.
100%. This is a complicated handicap to me, and they've always been complicated. I've went against Miami quite a few times and just came up on the wrong side of it because they are the most efficient team in all of football. They're a net negative 0.4 yards per play. Yet they're 8-4. They went from underrated this year to overrated, like fraudulent almost. I mean, the spread tells you that. But do you really want to lay 7.5 with a Kansas City team that just knows that they're going to win at the end of the game? They could dog it the whole game. That's just kind of how Kansas City's been doing it. You've seen them do it against the Chargers, the Denver. Against the Jets even. The Jets were somewhat in that game for a little bit. I think Carolina. It's just how do you bet Kansas City in this spot? I don't know, man. It's non-divisional game. Kansas City's already got it wrapped up.
And it's a piss off, too, because one of the losses I've had recently in the Circa was Kansas City against Tampa Bay, where they won 27-24 and had like 540 yards of offense. And just, they felt content putting up 27 points. And it's like, you could have hung 40, especially with that yardage total, So it's just, they're maddening because they have so much upside. They get so much respect in the betting market. I mean, look at their last 4 games. They've been a favorite of a touchdown or 7.5 or more 3 times. Haven't covered any of them, but they've won every one of those games. So why is this week any different? But again, I can't take Miami because there's the off chance that Kansas City decides to give a shit for a week. Maybe Kansas City's give a shit week is next week on the road at New Orleans, where they can make a statement in what I believe personally to be a Super Bowl preview.
Yeah, man, that is very close to a Super Bowl preview in my book. A lot of people like the Packers too, and then there's the Rams hiding out right there too. But no, this is I think that's the closest game to the Super Bowl as we're going to get this year. Great call. Let's go to a game that I know a little bit more about because being an unfortunate Chicago Bear fan. Houston Texans are at the Bears, and it's about a pick 'em right now. The total on this is 45. This is funny, this killer sports trend. And when I was writing this up this morning, they sent this out, Adam, and get this. This is hilarious. Since 2005, when the Bears have had less than 14 days of rest and the line is less than +3, and they weren't a +2 or larger dog the previous game, and their time of possession is greater than 24 minutes, they face a team that gets over 64% of their first downs from the pass. The over is 32-0. I was actually just surprised I was able to say that, but Killer Sports comes up with some crazy stuff, man.
I think I need Will Hunting to break that one down for me.
Yes, you do. And it still boggles my mind, but it's so funny they come up with these. And I love Killer Sports, and I love their database. I don't know how to use it as good as others, but I do use it sometimes. But it's just funny how they find something that's 32-0 by doing this. And I wonder if the database almost does it for them automatically. But they go over everything. I can't go by that. I can't. It's just such a random thing. And I'm being a Bears fan. I just look back at it as like, well, when they face teams that can pass the ball, they get first. The other teams get first downs. The Bears have been bad for years. But albeit all that, I still like the over in this game. And the reason is because the Bears are a desperate team. They're throwing the ball all over the place, but Mitch has been playing. You know what that means? That means pick six or possible crazy touchdown, whatever can happen first. I got to tell you, Houston, they should have had that game last week. They really should have. And I believe I had the under, so I was clapping when that stupid fumble happened right at the goal line. You saw J.J. Watt's face just absolutely drop when that happened, but that was a dead over, being over 30 points at halftime, and thank God I got the under 51 on that. But anyways, their defense is bottom 4. They're terrible. The Bears' defense is average at yards per play. They're 5.4. They lost some guys to injuries. I don't like their coordinator, Pagano. I think he was one of the biggest frauds in the NFL, in my opinion. I'm taking the over here because I just see so many ways points can be scored here. And I think Deshaun Watson's going to put up a good effort. I definitely know the Texans are getting in the 20s. The Texans' defense isn't that good. I can see the Bears getting in the 20s or giving them into the 30s. So over 45. Any thoughts?
No, I can't argue with what you said, and I certainly can't argue with the mouthful 32-0 over trend. I was on the Colts last week in the Circa. That's one I got very, very lucky on. The other one was the Dolphins covering by half a point at 11.5 when they couldn't score in the red zone. Sometimes you need those things, especially in a contest like that where, you got to handicap well, but you also got to run good too. And, I ran good there with the Houston turnover at the goal line. And a lot of questions coming out of that situation for Houston. I mean, this is a Houston team that they've played hard for Romeo Crennel ever since they got rid of the anchor that was Bill O'Brien. And Crennel's not getting this job. So to me, I sit there and I look at Houston and I say any winnable game they have, they're going to show up for. And this is a winnable game. The problem is, who's catching passes for Houston now? I mean, Brandon Cooks goes out with a concussion. Obviously, they lost Will Fuller, traded DeAndre Hopkins. They're running out of warm bodies there at wide receiver for Watson to actually throw the football to, and God knows they can't run it. So that's the concern that I have is, Houston's very one-dimensional here in this game. Does Chicago's pass defense show up? I think that's a pretty legitimate concern. Does Chicago's offense show up? Do they show up for Matt Nagy, or are they just kind of ready to move on from him too? The over makes sense to me from a side standpoint. It's kind of I sound like a broken record this week, and that's what worries me in the Circa. There are just not many sides that I'm really enamored with. A lot of good teaser plays, but I don't think a whole lot of straight sides out there.
No, I hate the sides. Anything I kind of like is juice towards that direction, to be honest with you. Tampa Bay is something I was looking at, and it's past my power rating number. The Bills are -2.5, and how did that happen? I mean, the Steelers were overrated, but they're still higher than the Bills on my power ratings. I don't know, and I don't know a lot of people that have the Bills higher than the Steelers. I don't. It's tough this week, man. I agree, 100%.
I don't do NFL power ratings, but Buffalo is rounding into form. I mean, their defense is healthy now. They got Milano back last week. Trey White's been playing. They got Norman off the COVID list a couple weeks ago. Allen just. Man, does he look good. Brian Dable's hitting all the right buttons, dialing up all the right plays. And Pittsburgh, look, as good as that Pittsburgh defense is, and I know we weren't going to talk about this game, so I'm just going off on a tangent and hijacking the show.
It's great. I like it.
Pittsburgh's offense has been pedestrian all year long. I mean, they've got Claypool and they got Smith-Schuster, but they can't really run the ball. They're not really doing a whole lot in terms of explosive plays other than when Claypool does something. And that defense just keeps losing guys left and right. Spillane's not supposed to play this week. They already lost Dupree. Their second level is in shambles, and Buffalo attacks the second level really, really well. I'm a little bit worried about the weather forecast for Josh Allen and if Buffalo has to run the football, but I think the move is right. I think the adjustment is correct, and I think Pittsburgh is definitely a team going in the wrong direction.
All right. Well, great handicap. There you go. You just.
I don't know if it's a great handicap or not. We'll find out Sunday night, I guess.
Well, that sounded good. It sounded good to me either. It's not like you have to be right to have a great handicap, And no, it's. I appreciate that. That's the extra game that we threw in then, and you're definitely going to make me lean more towards Buffalo now. I'm going to keep watching that line a little bit. You might see some Steelers money come in too. So interesting stuff there. I didn't know that their secondary was in shambles like that, Adam. So. Good stuff. Let's move into Indianapolis versus Las Vegas. +2.5. The total on this is 51. The Raiders looked like a true AFC contender when they beat the Chiefs a month ago or so. And then the last 3 weeks, you're like, who the hell is this team? Yeah, they're just so up and down. So just yin and yang, man. Jekyll and Hyde. Great offense when they're humming. Waller's a beast. Their defense can be so bad at times. When they get one-dimensional and have to play catch-up, I'm noticing, is when they tend to fail, I mean, when the defenses are stopping them when they get one-dimensional. And this has kind of happened against Tampa Bay. It happened against Atlanta. It happened against New England. It's that's the weird thing about them. And on the other side of the coin, the Colts, you've seen them be pretty untrustworthy with Rivers at quarterback. You know, the team's loaded with talent, but sometimes they pull some stinkers like we saw against Tennessee. Now they're going on the road, and, you know, it's a non-division game, but, you know, Las Vegas is kind of now wondering about the playoffs, and the Colts should make it. You know, now the Colts should be in. But either way, I'm finding it tough picking a side here between the threes. Both have some secondary questions, too. If you look at the injury reports, there's a lot of people listed at questionable, and we might not know the status of that until game time. So I was looking at the over. It's at 51.5. I guess I was looking at it at 51, and it moved in the direction I was going to take it, so that always sucks. But, you know, looking at the way the Texans been on defense lately, it hasn't been that good. They've been giving up a lot of points lately through the air. And that's what the Raiders do. They can throw the ball. So I'm going to lean to the over. Small lean to the Raiders, strong lean to the over, but I haven't taken it yet. What are your thoughts?
I actually like the Raiders in this game, and it scares the hell out of me. I'll admit that up front. But I sort of put this game in the same bucket as what happened to Tennessee last week. Now, I don't think Vegas is up 38-7 at halftime, although if I do decide to take the Raiders, I'll be very happy if that's the outcome. But for Indianapolis here, you got the second straight road game, which is different than the Tennessee spot, but they played Tennessee, Green Bay, Tennessee again, and then that game against Houston that they probably should have lost. So 3 of the last 4 in division, back-to-back road games now, against a Raiders team that just found hope again. You know, if they lose that game to the Jets, they have no shot at the playoffs. Now they at least have a chance. And when you look back to their game against the Chargers back on November 8th, that's one where the Chargers had 2 fades, 2 replay reviews, where that game could have gone either way. The following week, Vegas blows out Denver 37-12. Now, obviously, Indianapolis is a much better team than Denver, but I think situationally here, I think Vegas has a second wind. They have a second life, and I think this is a tough spot for a Colts team that's played, you know, some close games, a lot of really good opponents here lately. They got Houston on deck next week again. This just kind of feels like a little bit of a flatter spot for Indianapolis, and I think it's a good chance to buy low on the Raiders a little bit. You know, if the Raiders cover against the Jets, let's say they win by 14 or 17, something like that, the Raiders are probably, -1, -1.5 in this game, but now we're getting 2.5 points on them because they almost lost to the worst team in the NFL. I think I can draw kind of a line through that spot for them and go ahead and back the Raiders here. So, of the games we've talked about so far, boy, I think the Raiders are the one I like the most. And like I said, it's scary, but I think it's just kind of the way the handicap's pointing me.
Well, it's true. I mean, at 2.5, you know, it's still sitting at 2.5. Some threes are juiced, right? I mean, so that kind of tells you that they're scared to get the 3. That means that the Raiders are right side in many situations. So, great job there. This is kind of one of those situations where it's do or die for them. And I kind of looked at that way, the same way with the Arizona, but unfortunately Arizona's on the road. So I totally get what you're talking about there. Any other games you want to throw out?
The only other game that I was kind of looking at here a little bit, you mentioned it in passing. I think this is a play-on spot for Tampa Bay. And I have been looking at a lot of teams here and how they've struggled coming off the bye a little bit. But I think Tampa Bay needed the bye. I think because they're an older team, because things were kind of spiraling a little bit for them to a degree, I think they needed that bye week. I think Minnesota is a team that, while decent and while, you know, currently in a playoff position in the NFC, as crazy as that sounds, you know, I don't like Cousins when he gets pressured. The Buccaneers can get some pressure here. I don't like that Minnesota secondary. They can be exploited. You got the long trip here from Minnesota down to the Gulf Coast of Florida. I just think this spot sets up well for Tampa Bay. I think there's a reason why this line is sitting 6.5. And in the NFL, you look for a lot of context clues. And Minnesota, you know, it hasn't been pretty, but they've been winning games. They've gotten themselves back in that playoff picture. Tampa Bay has not. They're coming off of a bye, and we've seen teams get penalized for coming off the bye in the betting markets. And yet this one's sitting there at 6.5 and really hasn't moved down and is even showing possible indications of going to 7. That says a lot to me about the evaluation of Tampa Bay. Excuse me. I think they're the right side in that game. It's probably the second favorite play for me here so far.
Awesome, man. Thank you for that. So we're going to play on Tampa Bay for Adam Burke right there, who's kicking ass at the Circa. Adam, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. I had an absolute blast talking to you, man. Hey, this weekend when you have a chance, when you're drinking a beer, please go ahead and shoot me a text on what you're sipping on.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And, thanks to the listeners. I know it's probably one of the longest shows you've done here since we went so long talking about beers early on. But, it's a passion project for both of us, I think, doing what we do here in this business. And, it's always nice to talk about something other than sports, but it always comes back to that. And I appreciate the great discussion on the show today, man.
So do I. Have a great rest of your weekend. All right, now it is time for our Refuse to Lose 6-point teaser. And we are 7-6 for the year, won it last week. We have to stick with the Packers because they've been doing well for us. We're going to tease the Packers down to 1.5 at the Detroit Lions, who are high and mighty from beating the Bears. They got that one game after firing their coach out and past them. And the Tampa Bay Bucks down to 0.5 against the Minnesota Vikings. And the Vikings had a weird overtime game at home versus the Jaguars last week. The Packers, they've been on fire, like I said. I think they're way better than the Lions. This is just going to be another easy victory for them. And the Bucks, coming off the bye, like Adam said, is in a good spot. Now for our final bow to the gambling gods parlay. It's only 2-9 this year, but we are going to bring it back for basketball season starting probably in January. So when we get a better grip on basketball and when it kind of evens itself out, we'll have this. But this is the last one for the football season, and I'm just doing all NCAA, baby. We're doing Illinois plus 14.5 against Northwestern. It's a rivalry game. We're doing Wake Forest plus 2 against Louisville. And Louisville, Tutu Atwell, that's his name, Tutu Atwell. He is their best receiver. He opted out for the NFL, so he's not playing this game like that. Next one is West Virginia plus 14, like I said with Kyle. I just don't think that Oklahoma is going to try to blow out anyone in this spot. They're going to try to stay healthy for the Big 12 championship game. They shouldn't care about this game. Baylor plus 4.5. Oklahoma State's probably defeated after losing last week, and now they're out of the Big 12 contention, and we're going to take Arkansas plus 31.5 to christen it. Everyone's going to be on Alabama as usual. I think this is finally the spot that Alabama doesn't cover because Alabama is facing a tough Florida team coming up for the SEC title game next week. I think Alabama rests their guys, and they have a good shot here. This one pays, since we're doing all big dog spreads, 24-1. So we're going to try to go out with a bang. Just use your fun money on this one. Now it is time for
The Sharp Side of the Force.
The Sharp Side of the Force is brought to you by uwager.eu for a 80% bonus. Please visit uwager and use the promo code ODDSBREAKERS. Terms and conditions and location apply. All right, let's move in to Sharp College here. Looks like Pittsburgh from -5 to -6.5. 83% of the tickets on Pitt and 95% of the money. Some dual action on this one. A little bit of sharp money on Marshall, but that game was canceled, so we'll be skipping over that one. Sharp money on Eastern Michigan, -4 to -5. 55% of the tickets and 76% of the money. People are fading Northern Illinois. Sharp money on West Virginia at +14. 37% of the tickets on West Virginia, 75% of the money. Sharp money on Miami, Ohio, -21.5 to -24 at Bowling Green. 48% of the tickets on Miami, Ohio, 97% of the money. Sharp money on Rice from +9 down to +6.5, +7-ish. 56% of the tickets on Rice and 80% of the money. Sharp money on Buffalo, minus 33.5, hosting Akron. 57% of the tickets on Buffalo and 90% of the money. Sharp money on Army in the Army-Navy game from minus 5 to minus 7. 45% of the tickets on Army, 95% of the money. Sharp money on Troy at plus 14 against Coastal Carolina. 24% of the tickets on Troy and 68% of the money. Sharp money on Washington, plus 6.5. 40% of the tickets on Washington and 63% of the money. Sharp money on Florida State. Minus 4.5. 61% of the tickets on Florida State, 94% of the money. Sharp money on App State, minus 9.5. 35% of the tickets on App State, 71% of the money. I disagree with that move. Sharp money on Boise State, 50 at minus 11. 52% of the tickets on Boise State, 78% of the money. And sharp money on LSU at plus 23. 43% of the tickets on LSU, 92% of the money. Sharp money on Louisiana Tech at TCU, plus 21.5. 25% of the tickets and 84% of the money. Sharp money on Virginia versus Virginia Tech from plus 3 down to plus 2. 66% of the tickets are on Virginia and 97% of the money. Sharp money on Mississippi State plus 9 to plus 6.5. 38% of the tickets on Mississippi State, 88% of the money. And sharp money on Fresno State minus 11.5 at New Mexico. 44% of the tickets on Fresno State, 98% of the money. Sharp money on Oregon State at hosting Stanford, plus 3.5 to down plus 2.5. 45% of the tickets on Oregon State and 80% of the money. And that's about it, I believe. Nobody's betting Ohio State yet because they are not playing Michigan. There was some sharp money on Ohio State. Sharp totals. We have San Jose State versus Nevada under 58.5. 19% of the tickets on the under, 97% of the money. Sharp money on Northern Illinois, Eastern Michigan under 60.5 down to 55.5. 62% of the tickets on the under, 85% of the money. Thinking Northern Illinois now at score, that might not score much. Sharp money on Western Michigan versus Ball State under 71.5 down to 68. 63% of the tickets on the under, 87% of the money. Sharp money on the Oklahoma versus West Virginia under 57 down to 55.5. 66% of the tickets on the under, 99% of the money. That's a pretty good amount. North Carolina versus Miami over 67.5. Sorry, it went from 63.5 to 67.5, 68 in some books. 55% of the tickets on the over, 92% of the money. Sharp money on Washington versus Oregon over 63% of the tickets on the over, 54.5, 86% of the money. Sharp money on the TCU versus LA Tech under 55 down to 52.5, 17% of the tickets on the under, 95% of the money. Sharp money on the USC versus UCLA over 62, 40% of the tickets on the over, 72% of the money. Sharp money on the Oregon State versus Stanford under 67% of the tickets under 55.5 down to 53 and 99% of the money. Illinois versus Northwestern was also a sharp movement, but they're buying back. It went all the way down from 46.5. As you remember, we gave it away back then on our Monday podcast, Tuesday morning podcast, and it's now down to 40.5. But there's buyback happening right now, so there's not a huge money discrepancy. Just to let you know, that was a pretty big line move. NFL, sharp money on the Rams at minus 5. 49% of the tickets on the Rams, 69% of the money for a Thursday nighter. Sharp money on the Titans at minus 7.5. 57% of the tickets on the Titans, 78% of the money. Sharp money on the Cardinals, minus 2. 66% of the tickets on the Cardinals, 90% of the money. Sharp money on the Colts at minus 2.5 at the Raiders. 50% of the tickets on the Colts and 91% of the money. disagree with that too. Sharp money on the Saints at -7 at the Eagles. 73% of the tickets on the Saints, 91% of the money. Sharp NFL totals. We have sharp money on the Texans versus Bears over 44.5 to 45.5. 58% of the tickets on the over, 93% of the money. I'm shocked that total's that low. Sharp money on the Cowboys versus the Bengals under 43.5 down to 42. 41% of the tickets on the under, 93% of the money. Sharp money on the Cardinals versus Giants under 45.5. 46% of the tickets on the under, 76% of the money. Sharp money on the Chiefs versus Miami over 49 to 49.5. 44% of the tickets on the over, 90% of the money. Sharp money on the Colts versus Raiders over 51 to 51.5. 58% of the tickets on the over, 78% of the money. Sharp money on the Packers versus Lions over 54 to 55.5. 62% of the tickets on the over, 88% of the money. That's all we have, my friends. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I know it went long, but I had a blast with Adam. Hopefully you guys learned some great information. I know that I did. Always learn from our guests. Everyone have a great weekend of sports. Stay safe and go get some winners.